You can see if I remove this capacitor on the board here, it's still working. The lights are still switching, it's still sending data to the computer. So how come even after I remove that capacitor, everything's still working fine? I'm gonna go for gold and see if I can rip off a second capacitor. Come on. All right, so I'm gonna unplug it, rip off this whole thing, and then plug it in, see if it still works. I just ripped off 2 capacitors off this Arduino Nano microcontroller, and yet the LEDs are still changing color according to the program. It's still outputting data to the computer according to the program. Yet I just ripped off 2 major components and it's still working fine. So why did he even have them to begin with if it's still working without them? We're going to talk about that today on Fluxbench. My name's James. I'm a nerd, and I think that electronics is pretty dang simple, and yet people tend to go and blow it out of proportion, say it's way more complicated than it actually is. There's a bajillion reasons why you would want a capacitor. Like, not everyone this big. This one's kind of scary, it's so big. But there's really only 3 reasons why you're gonna need them and need to know about them. Here's a quick summary of the whole video. We're talking about why you need capacitors for modern electronics and how even something like a 9-volt battery can supply power, but still, you need capacitors all over your circuit board. Even if you add big capacitors like this, you still have to add a tiny one right next to your microcontroller. And why you would add a resistor before a capacitor, so that way your sensor that interacts with the physical world can get an accurate reading and not come out noisy. We're not covering why your air conditioner motor won't start when it's connected to alternating current, and that's because the capacitor degrades due to heat and amps over time, and eventually it degrades to the point where the peak amount of power pulled by the motor doesn't align with the peak voltage delivered from the grid, and so it just doesn't have enough oomph to start. So are these capacitors even needed then? Well, absolutely, if I'm going to be honest. Just because I was doing some stupid trivial thing where I was blinking some LEDs, and in fact, I wasn't even turning on any more than 1 LED at a time, so this board was using as little power as it basically feasibly can. It's basically idling. So yeah, that's not a great example of what this board needs to be capable of doing. Whatever it says it can do, it can run at like 16 megahertz. Let's say you're just doing tons of calculations. This board might have needed all the oomph it could get in the power supplies, and then it would have just kind of browned out at some point. You know how like your lights can kind of like dim in your house and kind of flicker? That's exactly what would happen here if we removed these capacitors and try to do any decent work. If you try to go and use Wi-Fi on a microcontroller, that's basically the equivalent of like when a car stereo goes oomph, 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 and the lights go and get dim every time it makes a big boom. That's what this is for. This is a car capacitor for the stereo system because the batteries are so far away from the stereo equipment. I mean, I know they're like 4 feet away. How far? Well, that's a lot of cord and everything has resistance. So as that voltage from that battery goes through that cord, it's going to actually drop in voltage. And so by the time it gets to those speaker systems, it might not be enough to give it the oomph you want. And in fact, the bigger the oomph, the more amps those speakers are drawing, the bigger that voltage drop is going to be. So with a big enough ounce, you're going to see the car lights flicker on and off. So same thing with this. If you try to actually do anything, pulling a decent amount of amps, you're going to start noticing issues where it might brown out. It might basically turn off and on real quick, or something just might not work. You start getting weird issues when you don't get enough power. So these things are cheap. This little capacitor here, I don't know if it's even a penny. So this here is a kit of capacitors, and you basically have all the ones from the real tiny up to the real big, and these are kind of used so that way you can put them right next to a microcontroller or something that just needs to go and get little sips of power really quickly. And then if you want to go and power your board, you're going to want to have a stable power supply. And so that's what these things are for. They're basically enough to go and keep your whole board supplied with power. One of the downsides to capacitors is they're not very accurate as far as how much capacitance or electricity you could say that they hold. This one here is rated for 1000 microfarads, but you see I'm not quite getting that. And if I look at the 680 microfarad one, it's also not quite that. A typical electrolytic capacitor might be plus or minus 20% of what it says on the label, and that's expected. That's just kind of standard. And it's not like they're being quite chintzy here. If we look at the smaller ones, they're actually about 20% more than they should be. But the types of capacitors that you're going to go and see on a little tiny microcontroller like that are just small, like smaller than a grain of rice. Can you even see these from there? Oh, shoot. So I accidentally knocked over my container of capacitors, and luckily that's about 5 cents. There may be literally 5 or 10 of them for a penny. They are so dang small. These are the ones that I ripped off the Arduino Nano, and these are the ones that I tend to use on like my ESP32s and my microcontrollers I make. But you only really need big stuff like this when you're doing stuff with power supplies. Like, look tiny, big, honker chonkers, little tiny guys. Like, imagine if you try to put one of those capacitors on this board. Like, it's bigger than most of the board. So that's why you use these. You just scatter them around. They're scattered around the bottom, on the top, and they're just so tiny, you can get them really close to like the chip or whatever it is that you're actually trying to power. Well, I used to have what I called the bucket of shame, but now I'm going to have to go and make the new cup of shame where I put all my horrible electrical mistakes. So given these are so dang small, like, that's a dime, that's a penny, these are change, you know, how the heck do you actually pick these up? Well, you get yourself a nice little tweezer kit like this. So you can use a lot of cool little tweezers like this that come in all sorts of different shapes, but my favorite is just a straight up ESD11. And what I like about them is I can just get exactly where I want on the capacitor or resistor and then just place it down. And let's see if I can stack one on top of the other from like 2 feet away. Oh, what was that? I can't even see this. All right, I'm gonna get close. Oh, that's... Oh! Oh, hell yeah. So, I'm just having fun at this point. Oh! Gosh, I gotta go for more. Oh, that was all right. That was stupid fun. Sorry about that. It's been a long month working hard. Just needed to have a little fun. So back to how capacitors work and how they're used. The reason why you see capacitors everywhere is electricity does not come from nowhere. It's got to come from somewhere and go through stuff, and that stuff has resistance. Nothing is really a supercapacitor, so this formula, Ohm's law, basically says the voltage drop across the wire, through the copper in the circuit board, whatever, everything has resistance. So that voltage drop when electricity is flown through a wire is equal to the amps times the resistance. What that means is just no matter what, if you have power coming in here and the chips are over here, you're going to have some sort of voltage drop. How much all depends on the number of amps and the amount of resistance. Normally that amount of resistance is fixed, such as the wires in this cable are not changing no matter what. They're the same gauge of wire. So what will depend on how much voltage drop happens across this wire is the amount of amps. It's a simple formula, but there's so many implications across electronics, and if you want to go and get more comfortable with Ohm's law in an intuitive way, check out this video's sponsor, Brilliant. They have a course called Circuits which covers Ohm's law as well as many other topics that we've mentioned but haven't quite had the time to go into detail in this video. I highly recommend people getting into electronics check out Brilliant because it takes these complex topics and breaks them down into simple interactive lessons that are more like a mini game out of a video game where you can just go and spend the 10 or 15 minutes or however much free time you have every day to go and actually make progress in learning whatever the thing is that is your goal. The courses are crafted by teachers from Harvard, MIT, and Stanford, and they're good for anyone from a 10-year-old up to a 110-year-old, and since they're actually interactive and they make your brain go and get involved, it's a lot better and more effective than watching just a video alone. To learn for free on Brilliant for a full 30 days, go to brilliant.org/fluxbench, scan the QR code on screen, or click on the link in the description. Brilliant's also given our viewers 20% off an annual premium subscription, which gives you unlimited daily access to everything on Brilliant. Sometimes the voltage drop comes from the power source. This battery can output tens of amps without having the voltage drop significantly, but this 9-volt battery can barely do it, outputting a quarter of an amp or something. This here is a brand new 9-volt battery, and this is a adjustable load. I currently have it set to 0 amps, so if I go to 0.1 amps, you'll notice the volts drop immediately. And if I go to 0.2 amps, they drop even more. And 0.3 amps, and now that is not a 9-volt battery's voltage output, well, at least what you would think. Jeez, I mean, that dropped a couple volts just by adding about a third of an amp. So let's see if we add a whole amp to this 9-volt battery, how much that voltage will drop. Oh my goodness, that basically is, that is way too low. And the way that relates to capacitors is we all know capacitors are just little tiny storages of energy, right? Like they're like a battery, but they can charge and discharge almost instantly. They're limited by that resistance and that formula and other stuff. But point being, capacitors are used to prevent voltage drops because they're an energy source that's physically closer to where the energy is being consumed. Therefore, there's less resistance between them and there's less of a voltage drop. They can charge up over time using the main power supply and then discharge rapidly whenever something needs a big burst of current. And when you have like a wall power supply like this that has 5 volts DC, and then you have a long wire, I mean, like, it's not even a thick wire. There's going to be a decent amount of resistance in this. And so what if I plugged in this little Arduino board? It's a dinky board, right? But it actually has a 16 megahertz processor. That means 16 million times a second it's processing instructions inside, which means it's got transistors or little tiny on-off switches that are changing 16 million times a second. And guess what? Most power supplies just try to keep the output voltage the same by adjusting the power flowing through them maybe 50,000 up to about 1,000,000 times per second. So a capacitor needs to sit between the power supply that's changing slowly and the power consumption that's changing rapidly. And you know Wi-Fi, 2.4 gigahertz, and that signal is going up and down and changing really rapidly. So 2.4 billion times a second, you could have amps going up and down through this wire. For the last big use of capacitors that you'll see almost everywhere is what's called a RC filter. It basically smooths out voltage ripple. So what you do is you basically add a resistor between, let's say, a power source and your capacitor. So as the voltage in your power source is going up and down and up and down and up and down, and it's basically directly connected to the capacitor, the voltage of the capacitor will go up and down very rapidly. But what happens if you added a smaller pipe or something between them, added resistance between them? As the power source went up and down, all of a sudden the change in the capacitor wouldn't be as much. That's basically what happens when you have a power supply going to a resistor that then goes into a capacitor. Is even though the power supply might be fluctuating in voltage, it kind of gets smoothed out by the resistor and then accumulates in the capacitor. So you'll see that all over the place, wherever you need just a very stable voltage, because believe it or not, we could go and add a bunch of these. We could even add a huge capacitor like this, and it still wouldn't go and make as smooth of a voltage as if we added a resistor before the capacitor and just did what's called this RC circuit, the resistor capacitor circuit. So that's it. That's the whole story of why you're actually going to use capacitors. Are there other reasons? Yeah, there's a bajillion reasons on how you can use these capacitors, but most of it gets to be like analog stuff, signal processing. Once you start getting into any crazy scale of electronics, capacitors are just, there's literally resistance, capacitance, and inductance, and like that's like the primary forces in electronics. So yeah, it's going to be everywhere. So that's it. That's all I want to go and share. I just hope that capacitors are not crazy and complex to you now. They're very, very simple. Yeah, they have crazy nuances, but there's really only 3 ways that you're going to need them. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. I hope you go out and make something awesome.